first, nobody saw the girl standing at the rope barrier. Everyone was too focused on the broken motorcycle and the angry rider. The mechanics were packing up their tools. They looked like they had given up. Danny was on his phone, probably calling someone to complain. The festival organizers stood in a tight circle, their faces red from stress and heat. The girl cleared her throat softly. No one heard her. She cleared it again a little louder. One of the mechanics glanced her way, but then looked back at his toolbox. She stood there for another minute, feeling foolish. Maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe she should just go back to the booth and help her father. These were professionals. They probably knew what they were doing, but then Danny suddenly shouted at his entire crew. His voice was loud and sharp. "You're all useless. I pay you good money and you can't even fix one bike. Get out of here! All of you, just go." He waved his arms, dismissing them. The mechanics looked shocked. Some of them tried to protest. They said they did everything they could. They ran every test. They checked every system. But Danny was too angry to listen. He told them again to leave. Slowly, the mechanics gathered their equipment and walked away from the pit area. They looked embarrassed and upset. Now Danny stood alone next to his broken motorcycle. He put both hands on the seat and leaned forward with his head down. The teenage boys watching from behind the rope felt uncomfortable. It was hard to see someone so famous look so defeated. The crowd in the distance was getting smaller as more people left the festival. The girl saw her chance. With the mechanics gone, maybe the rider would listen to her. She raised her hand like she was in school trying to get the teacher's attention. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Excuse me." Danny did not move. He either did not hear her or chose to ignore her. The festival organizers were still talking among themselves. No one paid attention to the teenage girl in dirty coveralls. She tried again, louder this time. "Excuse me, sir. I think I might be able to help." This time Danny lifted his head. He turned and looked at her with tired eyes. For a moment he just stared like he was trying to understand why a teenager was talking to him. Then he looked at her coveralls and the tools on her belt. He let out a long breath that was almost a laugh, but not a happy one. "You?" he said. "You think you can help? Did you not see that I just fired my entire professional crew? They've been working on bikes for 20 years. What makes you think you can do anything?" The girl felt her face get hot. She almost turned around and walked away. But something made her stay. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was confidence in her own skills. Or maybe she just really wanted to see that beautiful motorcycle run the way it was supposed to. "I've been working on bikes since I was 8 years old," she said quietly. "I work in my father's shop. I've seen a lot of different problems, and I think I might know what's wrong with yours." Danny stared at her for a long moment. The teenage boys behind the rope exchanged looks. Jake elbowed Tyler and whispered something. Sam pulled out his phone and started recording. Chris leaned forward to hear better. One of the festival organizers walked over. He was an older man with gray hair and a yellow shirt that said staff on it. "Danny, we need to make a decision soon. Either we cancel or we find another rider to go on. We can't keep the crowd waiting much longer." Danny looked at the motorcycle. Then he looked at the girl. Then he looked up at the sky like he was asking for patience. Finally, he shrugged. "Fine, whatever. What have I got to lose at this point? Come on." He waved her forward. A security guard moved the rope barrier aside. The girl walked into the pit area. Her legs felt shaky, but she kept moving forward. She could feel people watching her. The teenage boys pressed against the rope to see better. Some other people in the crowd noticed something was happening and stopped to watch. She walked up to the motorcycle and set down the small tool bag she had grabbed from her father's booth. She did not say anything at first. She just looked at the bike. It was even more beautiful up close. Every part was carefully designed and perfectly painted. This was not just a machine. It was art, so, Danny said impatiently. "What's your diagnosis, kid?" The girl did not answer right away. She walked around the bike slowly, looking at it from different angles. She crouched down and looked underneath. She ran her hand along the frame. Danny shifted his weight from foot to foot, clearly annoyed at her silence. The festival organizer checked his watch. "Can I start it?" she asked. Danny gestured toward the bike. "Be my guest." She threw her leg over the seat and settled into position. She was smaller than Danny, so her feet barely touched the ground. She turned the key and pressed the start button. The engine roared to life. It sounded powerful and strong, but only for a few seconds. Then came that grinding noise the mechanics had been fighting all day. The bike shuddered and died. She started it again. Same thing. She did it a third time, but this time she kept her hand on the fuel tank and her feet on the foot pegs. She felt the vibration run through the whole machine. It was subtle, but it was there. A tiny shake that should not exist in a bike this well made. She climbed off and grabbed a flashlight from her tool belt. She got down on her hands and knees next to the bike. Danny took a step back to give her room. She shined the light on the underside of the frame, moving the beam slowly along the metal. "What are you looking for?" Danny asked. He sounded less angry now and more curious. "Vibration," she said simply. "The bike shakes when it runs. Just a little bit, but enough to throw everything off. My mechanics checked the entire frame. They said it was solid. They checked for big cracks," she said, still moving the flashlight. "I'm looking for something smaller." The teenage boys could not see what she was doing from where they stood, but they could see Danny and the festival organizer watching her with intense focus. Other people started gathering behind the rope too. Word was spreading that something interesting was happening in the pit area. The girl moved to a different spot and shined the light at a new angle. She put her face close to the frame, her nose almost touching the metal. Her fingers traced along a welded joint where two parts of the frame connected. It was custom work, not factory standard. Someone had modified this bike to make it lighter and faster. Then she stopped. Her fingers stayed in one place. She leaned closer, squinting in the bright sunlight. "There," she said quietly. "There what?" Danny bent down next to her. "I don't see anything. It's really small," she said. "But there's a crack in the weld. Right here." She pointed to a spot that looked perfectly smooth and solid. "It's making the frame mount unstable. Just by a tiny bit. But when the engine runs, that tiny instability creates a vibration. And that vibration is confusing all your sensors. The bike thinks something is wrong, so it shuts down to protect itself." Danny stared at the spot she indicated. He could not see any crack. It looked fine to him. The festival organizer pulled out his phone and turned on its flashlight for extra light. Even with more light, the crack was invisible to their eyes. "How can you possibly see that?" Danny asked. He did not sound mean anymore. He sounded amazed. "I can't really see it," she admitted. "I can feel it. When you work with metal long enough, you learn what's right and what's not. This isn't right." She stood up and looked at Danny directly. "I can fix it. Temporarily, at least. It won't be pretty and it won't be permanent. But it will hold for your show today. After that, you'll need to take it to a real frame specialist to repair the weld properly." Danny looked at the festival organizer. The man shrugged. "We've got nothing to lose, Danny. And if she's right about the problem, you need to get it fixed anyway before you can ride anywhere." The famous rider looked back at the teenage girl in the two big coveralls. She met his eyes without looking away. There was no arrogance in her expression, just calm confidence. The confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was talking about. "Okay," Danny said. "Fix it." The girl nodded and immediately got to work. She opened her tool bag and started pulling out what she needed. A small metal file, a tube of industrial adhesive, some thin metal strips, wire cutters, a lighter. Everything looked old and well used, not like the shiny professional tools the mechanics had been using earlier. By now, a decent crowd had gathered behind the rope barrier. The teenage boys were right up front. Jake could not believe what he was watching. Here was someone his own age, about to work on a bike worth more than most people's houses. Sam was still recording everything on his phone. Tyler kept saying, "This is crazy," under his breath. Devin watched in complete silence. Chris wished he had brought his good camera. The girl laid out her tools in a neat row on the ground. She looked at the motorcycle like a doctor looking at a patient before surgery. She seemed to be planning her approach in her head before touching anything. Danny stood a few feet away with his arms crossed. He looked nervous. The festival organizer kept checking his phone and his watch. She got down on her back and slid under the motorcycle. Only her legs and feet stuck out. She had the flashlight in her mouth, so both hands were free. From under the bike, her voice came out muffled. "I need to stabilize the mount so it stops moving. Even that tiny movement is enough to cause problems." Danny bent down. "How are you going to stabilize it?" "I'm going to make a brace," she said. "It won't look nice, but it will work." For several minutes, no one could see what she was doing under there. They could hear small scraping sounds and the clink of metal on metal. The crowd grew larger. People who had been about to leave the festival came back when they heard something was finally happening. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders so they could see. The girl slid out from under the bike and sat up. Her face had a smudge of grease on the cheek. She picked up one of the metal strips and the wire cutters. She measured the strip against the frame of the bike, then cut it to length. She did this 3 times with 3 different pieces of metal. "What are those for?" Danny asked. "Reinforcement," she said. "I'm going to attach them around the cracked mount. It will spread the stress across a bigger area so that one weak point can't move anymore." She took the industrial adhesive and applied it carefully to the metal strips. The tube was old and the adhesive came out slowly. She had to squeeze hard to get enough. Then she slid back under the motorcycle. More scraping sounds, more clinking. She was working fast but also carefully. Her movements were efficient and precise. One of the professional mechanics who had been fired earlier came back to see what was happening. He pushed through the crowd and looked at the girl's legs sticking out from under the bike. "Who's that?" he asked someone. "Some kid," a man in the crowd answered. "She says she can fix it." The mechanic laughed. "No way. We've got years of experience and we couldn't figure it out. Some teenager isn't going to solve it in 5 minutes." But he stayed to watch anyway. He wanted to see her fail. Several other mechanics came back too. They stood together at the side, whispering to each other and shaking their heads. The girl slid out again. This time she grabbed the metal file. She went back under the bike and they heard a rhythmic scraping sound. She was filing something smooth, making sure all the edges of her makeshift brace were even and would not interfere with other parts of the bike. "How much longer?" the festival organizer asked Danny. He sounded stressed. "We've got sponsors asking questions. The crowd is getting restless again." "Give her time," Danny said, which was surprising because he had been the most impatient one earlier. But now he seemed genuinely curious to see if this girl could really do what she claimed. After what felt like forever but was probably only 10 minutes, the girl slid out from under the motorcycle for the last time. She was sweating and there was grease smeared on her coveralls and hands. She wiped her forehead with the back of her arm and left another dark streak. But she was smiling just a little bit. Not a big proud smile, just a small satisfied one. "Okay," she said. "The adhesive needs about 15 minutes to set properly, but we can test it in 5 minutes to see if the concept works." Danny looked at his watch. Then he looked at the crowd. Then he looked back at the girl. "You really think this will work?" "I think so," she said. She did not make promises she could not keep. "The brace should stop the frame mount from vibrating. If I'm right about that being the problem, then your bike should run fine." The teenage boys were buzzing with excitement. Jake said to Tyler, "Dude, if she actually fixes it, that would be insane." Tyler agreed. Sam's phone was almost out of battery from recording so much. Devin finally spoke, saying simply, "She knows what she's doing." Chris was already planning how to tell this story to his friends. While they waited for the adhesive to set, the girl cleaned her tools and put them back in her bag. She did not try to make conversation with Danny or explain herself to the growing crowd. She just focused on her work. Danny asked her name. She told him. He asked where she learned to work on bikes. She said from her father and from practice. He asked if she wanted to be a mechanic professionally. She shrugged and said she had not really thought about it. She was still in high school. The professional mechanics were still watching from the side. One of them, a man with a thick beard and a cap, walked closer. He looked at the girl with narrow eyes. "What did you do under there?" She explained about the cracked weld and the brace she had made. He listened and then shook his head. "We checked that frame completely. There's no crack. It's really small," she said. "You have to feel for it more than see it." "That's ridiculous," the mechanic said. "You can't diagnose a structural problem just by feeling." The girl did not argue. She just looked at him calmly and said, "We'll know in a few minutes if I'm right or wrong." The mechanic walked away, grumbling to his colleagues, but they all stayed to watch. No one wanted to miss what happened next. After 5 minutes, Danny asked if they could try starting the bike. The girls said they could do a quick test, but that it would be better to wait the full 15 minutes. Danny decided to try anyway. He was too anxious to wait longer. He climbed onto the motorcycle and turned the key. Everyone in the crowd went quiet. Even people far away seemed to sense that something important was happening. The teenage boys held their breath. The girl stood to the side with her hands in the pockets of her coveralls. She looked calm, but her shoulders were tense. Danny pressed the start button. The engine roared to life. It sounded powerful and clean. 5 seconds passed, then 10 seconds, then 20. The grinding noise did not come. The bike did not shudder and die. It just kept running, strong and steady. Danny gave it some gas. The engine responded perfectly. He let it run for a full minute, listening carefully to every sound. His expression changed from skeptical to surprised to genuinely impressed. He turned off the bike and sat there for a moment in silence. Then he looked at the girl. "You were right. The vibration is gone. I can feel it. The bike is solid now." The crowd behind the rope erupted in cheers. The teenage boys were jumping up and down. Sam held his phone high, still recording. People were clapping and whistling. Even some of the people in the crowd who did not understand what had just happened clapped because everyone else was clapping. The girl did not react much. She just nodded and said, "You should still wait the full 15 minutes before you ride hard. And remember, this is temporary. You need a real frame specialist to fix it properly." Danny climbed off the bike and walked over to her. He stuck out his hand. She looked at it for a second, then wiped her greasy hand on her coveralls and shook his hand. "Thank you," he said. "You just saved my show and probably my reputation." "What's your name again?" She told him again. He repeated it like he was memorizing it. "I'm not going to forget that name," he said. "Where did you say you work?" "My father's shop," she said. "It's on the east side of town. Nothing fancy. We just do regular repairs." The festival organizer rushed over looking relieved and excited. "This is incredible." "Danny, if you can ride, we need to start the show now before we lose any more of the crowd." Danny nodded. "Give me 15 minutes for that adhesive to fully set, then I'll be ready." He looked at the girl. "Will you stay? I want you here during the show, just in case." She hesitated. Her father was probably wondering where she was. But Danny looked at her with such genuine gratitude that she nodded. "Okay, I'll stay." The professional mechanics who had been watching walked away without saying anything to her. They looked embarrassed. The man with the beard glanced back once, and his expression was hard to read. Maybe respect, maybe resentment, probably both. The 15 minutes felt longer than they should have. The girl stood off to the side while Danny prepared for his show. He changed into fresh riding gear and checked his helmet. Festival staff rushed around making announcements and getting everything ready. The crowd outside the pit area had grown huge. Word had spread through the festival that something amazing had happened, and the show was finally going to start. The teenage boys stayed right where they were at the rope barrier. They had the best view, and they were not going to give it up. People pushed in behind them, but they held their ground. Jake felt proud even though he did not know the girl personally. She was around their age and she had done something incredible. Tyler kept saying he wished he could work on bikes like that. Sam's phone had died, but he did not even care. He had gotten enough footage. Devin was thinking about how much skill and confidence it took to volunteer like that in front of everyone. Chris wanted to talk to the girl but was too shy. The girl texted her father to let him know where she was. He texted back asking if she was okay. She said yes and that she would explain later. She put her phone away and watched Danny prepare. He moved differently now. Earlier he had been frustrated and angry. Now he seemed focused and energized. He kept looking at his motorcycle like he was seeing it with new appreciation. A woman with a clipboard and a headset approached the girl. "Hi, I'm the stage manager. Danny wants you in the pit area during the entire performance. Can you stay right here?" She pointed to a spot near the side of the main stage area where the girl would have a clear view, but would not be in the way. The girl nodded and moved to where the woman indicated. From there, she could see everything. The stage area had ramps and obstacles set up for Danny's stunts. There were jumps and rails and platforms. Everything was painted in bright colors and covered with sponsor logos. Large screens on both sides would show close-up video of the performance for people far back in the crowd. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We are ready to begin our main event. Please welcome the one, the only Danny the Hawk Harrison." The crowd roared. Music started playing, something with heavy drums and electric guitars. Danny rode his motorcycle out from the pit area and onto the stage. He circled the performance space once, standing up on the foot pegs with one hand in the air. The crowd went wild. The teenage boys cheered along with everyone else. Then Danny did something unexpected. He stopped his bike in the center of the stage. The music got quieter. He took off his helmet so people could see his face on the big screens. He spoke into a microphone that was clipped to his jacket. "Before I start, I need to tell you all something," he said. His voice echoed across the waterfront. This show almost did not happen today. My bike had a problem that my professional crew could not fix. We were about to cancel everything, the crowd murmured. People wondered where this was going. But then a young woman volunteered to help. She's still in high school. She works in her father's motorcycle shop here in town. And in less than 30 minutes, she diagnosed and fixed a problem that experienced mechanics could not figure out. He pointed toward where the girl stood. She's right over there. Can we get a spotlight on her? A bright light suddenly shined on the girl. She squinted and raised her hand to block the glare. On the big screens, her face appeared, looking surprised and uncomfortable. The crowd erupted in applause. She did not know what to do. She gave a small wave and wished the spotlight would turn off. Without her, none of this would be happening, Danny continued.
So this show is dedicated to her.
Let's hear it one more time. The crowd applauded even louder. The teenage boys were screaming and clapping. Jake felt like he was watching history being made. Finally, the spotlight moved away from the girl and back to Danny. She let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Her face felt hot and her heart was racing. She was not used to attention like that. Danny put his helmet back on and the music got loud again. Then he took off. What followed was one of the most impressive motorcycle performances the festival had ever seen. He hit the first ramp at full speed and launched into the air. While airborne, he stood up on the seat and spread his arms wide. The crowd gasped. He landed perfectly and immediately headed for the next obstacle. The girl watched with fascination. She had seen motorcycle stunts on television before, but never in person. It was completely different when you were there. You could hear the engine roar and the tires screech. You could feel the impact when the bike landed. You could sense the danger and skill involved in every move. Danny jumped over a row of barrels. He rode up a vertical ramp and did a backflip while holding onto the handlebars. He balanced on the back wheel and rode in a tight circle. Everything looked effortless, but the girl knew better. She understood how much control and precision each stunt required. One small mistake and he could crash. But he never made a mistake. Between stunts, she watched the bike carefully. She was looking for any sign that her repair might be failing. But the motorcycle performed flawlessly. The brace was holding. The vibration was gone. The bike responded to everything Danny asked of it. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not pride exactly, just the good feeling of knowing she had done her job well. The performance lasted 20 minutes. Danny did jumps that made people scream. He did tricks that made people gasp. For the finale, he went up the biggest ramp and launched higher than he had gone all day. While in the air, he let go of the handlebars completely and spread his arms and legs like he was flying. The crowd went silent for that brief moment. Then he grabbed the handlebars again and landed smoothly. The crowd exploded with applause. Danny took a victory lap around the stage area with his fist in the air. Then he rode back to the pit area where the girl was standing. He pulled up right next to her and shut off the engine. He removed his helmet and his face was covered in sweat, but he was grinning widely. "Perfect," he said to her. The bike ran perfectly. "Your repair held up through everything." She smiled a little. "Good, but you still need to get that frame properly fixed before you ride again." He laughed. "Yes, boss. I will." He climbed off the bike and several staff members came over to congratulate him and start breaking down the stage area, but Danny ignored them for a moment. He looked at the girl seriously. "I meant what I said out there. You saved this show. Can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Have you ever thought about doing this professionally? Working with racing teams or performance bikes?" She shrugged. "I'm just in high school. I haven't really thought about what comes after." "You should think about it," he said. "You have a gift. The way you diagnosed that problem, the way you fixed it with basic tools and improvised parts, that shows real understanding. Most mechanics just follow checklists and procedures. But you actually understand how machines work. That's rare." Before she could respond, the stage manager with the clipboard came over. "Danny, we need you for sponsor photos. And there are some journalists who want interviews." He nodded but kept looking at the girl. "Don't go anywhere, okay? I want to talk to you more after this media stuff." She agreed and he walked off toward a group of people with cameras. The girl stood there feeling strange. Everything had happened so fast. One moment she was organizing parts in her father's booth. The next moment she was fixing a famous rider's bike. Then she was on the big screen in front of thousands of people. Now Danny was talking about her future and her gifts. It was overwhelming. The teenage boys had finally left their spot at the rope barrier and came around to the pit area. A security guard tried to stop them, but the girl waved and said they were okay. The guard reluctantly let them through. Jake approached first. That was incredible. What you did, I mean, the repair and everything. She looked at him and the other boys. They seemed excited and impressed. Thanks. I just did what needed to be done. Sam, who had been recording earlier, said, I got the whole thing on video. Well, until my phone died, but I got the part where you fixed it. It's going to get so many views. She looked alarmed. You're going to post it? Are you kidding? This is amazing content. You're going to be famous. She was not sure she wanted to be famous. But before she could say anything, more people started approaching. Some wanted to congratulate her. Others wanted to ask technical questions about what she did. A few people asked for photos with her. She found herself surrounded by strangers, all talking at once. A man in a professional racing team jacket pushed through the small crowd. He introduced himself as a team manager for a major racing circuit. He asked for her name and contact information. He said his team might be interested in talking to her about opportunities. Before she could fully process that, another person introduced themselves as a recruiter for a technical school that specialized in automotive and motorcycle mechanics. The girl felt dizzy. This was too much attention. Too many people wanting things from her. She looked around for an escape route. Her eyes found the teenage boys. Devin, the quiet one, seemed to notice her distress. He stepped forward and said loudly, Hey everyone, give her some space. She just did something exhausting. Let her breathe. The crowd backed off a little. The girl gave Devin a grateful look. He nodded in understanding. The rest of the festival day was strange for the girl. She tried to go back to normal work at the booth, organizing parts and helping customers. But people kept recognizing her. They would stop and stare or point at her while whispering to their friends. Some came up to congratulate her or ask questions about the repair. She answered politely, but she wished everyone would just forget about it and leave her alone. Her father noticed her discomfort. During a quiet moment, he asked if she wanted to leave early. She shook her head. They had paid good money for the booth space and it was an important sales day. She would not let him lose business because she felt uncomfortable, so she stayed and worked, trying to ignore the attention. The teenage boys came back to the booth later in the afternoon. They had spent the rest of the day watching other shows and walking around the festival. But they wanted to talk to the girl again. Jake asked if she went to school nearby. She said yes, at the public high school on Oak Street. Tyler asked if she was in any classes with motorcycles or mechanics. She said no, her school did not have programs like that. She just learned everything from her father and from working in the shop. Sam told her that he had already posted the video clips to social media, and they were getting a lot of views and shares. People were commenting, asking who she was and where she learned to work on bikes. Some comments were from professional mechanics saying they were impressed. Others were from people saying they did not believe a teenager could really fix something that experienced mechanics could not. Sam showed her his phone screen with the numbers. Thousands of views already, and it had only been a few hours. The girl looked at the screen with mixed feelings. Part of her thought it was cool that people were interested, but another part of her felt exposed and nervous. She did not like the idea of strangers watching her and judging her. She handed the phone back to Sam and said, "That's nice, I guess." Devin asked the question that the others had been thinking but had not said out loud. "Are you going to call Danny's manager? What do you think he wants to talk about?" She touched the card in her pocket. She had not shown it to her father yet. "I don't know. Maybe he just wants to make sure I get paid for the repair or something." But Jake said, "No way. Danny said it was something important. I bet he wants to offer you a job or an apprenticeship. That would be amazing." She did not respond to that. She could not imagine leaving her father's shop or stopping school to work for some famous rider. That did not seem real. It seemed like something that happened to other people in movies, not to her in real life. So she changed the subject and asked the boys about their own bikes. They spent the next 30 minutes talking about motorcycle maintenance and modifications. This was comfortable territory for her. She could talk about engines and transmissions without feeling nervous or out of place. As the sun started to set, the festival began winding down. The crowds got smaller. Vendors started packing up their booths. The music got quieter. The girl and her father started loading their unsold inventory back into their van. The teenage boys helped carry boxes. Her father thanked them and offered them discount coupons for the shop. They accepted gratefully. Before they left, Jake said to the girl, "What you did today was really cool. You should be proud of yourself. She smiled a little. Thanks. I was just trying to help. Yeah, but most people wouldn't have volunteered like that. Most people would have been too scared or would have thought it wasn't their place. You were brave. She had not thought of it as brave. She had just seen a problem she thought she could fix. But maybe Jake was right. Maybe it did take courage to step forward like that. She thanked him again, and the boys said goodbye. They rode off on their motorcycles, the sound of their engines fading into the evening. The girl and her father finished packing in silence. Then they climbed into the van and started driving home. After a few minutes, her father said, "So are you going to tell me the whole story, or do I have to guess?" She told him everything. How she had noticed the vibration, how the mechanics could not figure it out, how Danny had fired his whole crew, how she had volunteered and what she had found, how she had made the temporary brace, how the bike had run perfectly during the show, how Danny had announced what she did to the whole crowd, how people had surrounded her afterward, and finally about the card Danny had given her. She pulled the card from her pocket and handed it to her father. He glanced at it while keeping his eyes mostly on the road. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're going to call them, right?" "I don't know. Maybe. Do you think I should?" He thought about it. "I think you should at least hear what they have to say. You don't have to agree to anything, but it doesn't hurt to listen. Who knows what kind of opportunity it might be?" She nodded slowly. "What if it's something big? What if they want me to work for them or travel with their team or something? Then you'll have a decision to make," her father said. "But that's a good problem to have. It means people recognize your talent. It means you have options. Not everyone gets that. But what about the shop? What about school?" Her father smiled. "The shop has been here for 20 years and it will be here 20 more. And school will still be there too. You're 16 years old. You don't have to figure out your whole life right now. But if an opportunity comes along, you should at least consider it seriously." They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence. When they pulled into the driveway, her mother was waiting on the porch. She had heard about what happened from a neighbor who had been at the festival. She hugged her daughter tight and said she was proud. Then she insisted on hearing the whole story again over dinner. That night, lying in bed, the girl could not sleep. Her mind kept replaying the day. The look on Danny's face when the bike started running smoothly, the sound of the crowd cheering, the feeling of the spotlight on her, the business cards people had given her, the video Sam had posted that was still getting views. It all felt surreal. She thought about what Jake had said, that she was brave for volunteering. She had never thought of herself as brave. She was just a quiet girl who liked working on motorcycles. She did not play sports or run for student council or do theater. She just went to school and went to work and went home. She had always been fine with being invisible. But today she had been the opposite of invisible. Today everyone had seen her. And the scary thing was, part of her had liked it. Not the attention itself, but the feeling of doing something she was good at and having people recognize it. The feeling of solving a problem that others could not solve. The feeling of being useful and skilled and needed. She picked up the business card from her nightstand and looked at it in the dim light from her window. It had a name, a phone number, and an email address. She could call. She could see what they wanted. Like her father said, it did not hurt to listen. But another part of her was afraid. What if they wanted something from her that she could not give? What if she was not as good as they thought? What if she let them down? She set the card back down and closed her eyes. She would think about it tomorrow. Tonight she just wanted to sleep and let her brain stop spinning. But even as she started to drift off, she could feel that her life had changed somehow. Maybe not in obvious ways yet, but in the feeling of it. Like a door had opened that she did not even know was there. And she could walk through it if she wanted to. The choice was hers. The next morning she woke up to her phone buzzing with notifications. She picked it up and saw messages from people at school who had seen the video. Most of them had never talked to her before. Some were congratulating her. Others were asking if the video was real. A few were making jokes. She put the phone down without responding to any of them. At breakfast, her mother asked if she had thought about calling the number on the card. She said not yet. Her mother did not push. But her father said, "The longer you wait, the harder it will be to make the call. If you're going to do it soon while they still remember you." That made sense. She did not want to seem uninterested or ungrateful, so after breakfast she went to her room and picked up the card again. She dialed the number before she could change her mind. It rang 3 times. Then a professional-sounding woman answered, "Morrison Management, how can I help you?" The girl's voice felt stuck in her throat. She cleared it and said, "Hi, my name is... I met Danny Harrison yesterday at the motorcycle festival. He gave me this card and asked me to call." There was a brief pause. Then the woman's tone changed, becoming warmer. "Oh yes, he told me to expect your call. Hold on just one moment, please." The girl waited, her heart beating fast. She heard muffled voices and then a man came on the line. "Hello, this is Richard Morrison. I manage Danny and several other professional riders. Danny told me what you did yesterday. Very impressive." "Thank you," she said quietly. "He also sent me the video that's been circulating online. I've watched it several times. Your diagnostic skills are remarkable for someone your age, or any age, really." She did not know what to say to that, so she just waited for him to continue. "I'll get right to the point," Richard said. "We'd like to meet with you and your parents to discuss some potential opportunities. Are you available sometime this week?" The girl felt her stomach flip. This was real. This was actually happening. I'd have to check with my parents. What kind of opportunities?" Richard laughed softly. "I'd rather discuss that in person if you don't mind. But I can tell you it involves education and professional development in motorcycle mechanics and engineering. Nothing that would require you to drop out of school or anything drastic. We're interested in supporting your talent, not disrupting your life." That made her feel a bit better. "Okay, I'll talk to my parents and let you know." "Perfect. Do you have my email? You can send me some times that work for your family, and we'll set something up. And bring your father if possible. Danny mentioned you work in his shop. We'd like to talk to him too." After they hung up, the girl sat on her bed staring at the wall. Her hands were shaking a little. She went downstairs and told her parents about the conversation. Her mother looked excited. Her father looked thoughtful. They agreed to meet with Richard Morrison later that week. School on Monday was weird. People who had never talked to her before suddenly knew her name. Some asked about the video. Others just stared at her in the hallways. A few teachers mentioned it, asking if it was really her. She confirmed it was, but did not elaborate. She just wanted to get through the day and go to work at the shop where things made sense. At lunch, she sat in her usual spot at the corner of the cafeteria. She always sat alone, and that was how she liked it. But today, 3 girls from her grade approached and asked if they could sit with her. She said okay, though she felt uncomfortable. They asked questions about the motorcycle and Danny Harrison, and what it felt like to be on the big screens. She answered briefly, hoping they would lose interest. Eventually, they did and went back to their own table. She finished her lunch in peace. The teenage boys from the festival did not go to her school, so she did not see them. But Sam had texted her asking if she wanted to get lunch sometime. She appreciated the gesture but did not know how to respond. She was not used to making friends or having a social life outside of work. She left the message unread for now. The meeting with Richard Morrison was scheduled for Thursday evening at a coffee shop downtown. The girl wore clean clothes and made sure to scrub all the grease from under her fingernails. Her parents wore nice outfits too. They arrived early and sat at a corner table. Her father kept tapping his fingers on the table. Her mother kept checking her phone. The girl just watched the door. Richard Morrison arrived exactly on time. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and an expensive-looking suit. He shook hands with everyone and ordered a coffee before getting down to business. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase and laid it on the table. "Thank you all for meeting with me," he said. "I'll be direct because I know everyone's time is valuable. What your daughter did at the festival caught the attention of several people in the professional racing community, not just because she fixed the bike, but because of how she did it. The way she diagnosed a problem that experienced mechanics missed shows exceptional aptitude." Her father leaned forward. "She's been working with motorcycles since she was very young. It's all self-taught and what I've been able to teach her." Richard nodded. "That's even more impressive. Formal education is valuable, but natural talent and hands-on experience can't be taught." He opened the folder. "I've been in contact with several organizations. One is a technical institute that specializes in automotive and motorcycle engineering. They offer a program for high school students that allows them to take college-level courses while still finishing their regular diploma." He slid a brochure across the table. The girl picked it up and looked at it. The school was about an hour away. The program looked intensive but interesting. "The institute is willing to offer your daughter a full scholarship," Richard continued. That includes tuition, books, and materials. They've seen the video and reviewed her case. They believe she would be an excellent candidate. The girl's mother put her hand over her mouth. Her father's eyes went wide. The girl herself felt frozen. A full scholarship. To study what she loved. It seemed too good to be true. There's more, Richard said. Danny would like to sponsor her directly. Not in a legal binding way, but more like a mentorship. He wants to cover any additional costs the scholarship doesn't include. Transportation, equipment, whatever she needs. And in return, she would occasionally help with his bike maintenance and be available for consultation on technical issues. Why? The girl asked. It was the first word she had spoken since they sat down. Why would he do all that for me? Richard smiled. 2 reasons. First, because he thinks you're incredibly talented and he wants to invest in that talent. Second, because his own crew embarrassed him. They couldn't solve a problem that you solved in minutes. It made him realize that maybe the best mechanics aren't always the ones with the most experience or the fanciest credentials. Sometimes it's the ones who really understand machines on a fundamental level. He wants you to develop that gift. The girl looked at her parents. Her mother had tears in her eyes. Her father looked proud but also concerned. What would this mean for her schedule? He asked. Could she still help at the shop? The program is flexible, Richard said. Classes are mostly in the evenings and on weekends. She would still attend regular high school during the day. It would be demanding, yes. But it's designed for students who are serious about this field. And what happens after she finishes the program? Her mother asked. That's up to her, Richard said. She could pursue further education. She could work for a racing team. She could open her own specialized shop. The certification she'd receive is recognized throughout the industry. It would open a lot of doors. They talked for another hour. Richard answered every question patiently. He showed them documents and letters of recommendation. He explained exactly what would be expected and what would be provided. By the end, it all seemed legitimate and genuinely designed to help the girl succeed. As they were getting ready to leave, Richard said to the girl, I need to know you understand something. This is a real opportunity, but it's also a commitment. The program is challenging. You'd be working harder than most people your age. You'd have to balance school and classes and work. It won't be easy. So before you say yes, make sure this is really what you want. The girl thought about it. Did she want this? The scholarship and the mentorship and the opportunity to learn at a higher level? A week ago, she would have said her life was fine the way it was. She liked working at her father's shop. She liked the simplicity of her routine. But now she had seen what was possible. She had felt what it was like to solve an important problem and have people recognize her skill. She had glimpsed a bigger world beyond her small shop and quiet life. Yes, she said, I want this. Richard smiled and shook her hand. Then let's make it happen. The paperwork took 2 weeks to process. During that time, the video from the festival continued spreading online. It had reached hundreds of thousands of views. People tagged her school's social media accounts. Local news channels asked for interviews. She declined all of them. She did not want to be famous. She just wanted to learn and work and get better at what she loved. The teenage boys came by the shop one Saturday. They brought their motorcycles because they wanted her to look at them. She spent the afternoon showing them maintenance techniques and helping them make small improvements. They paid her fairly and thanked her enthusiastically. Before they left, Jake said, We heard about the scholarship. That's awesome. You deserve it, she smiled. Thanks, I'm excited. And a little nervous. You'll do great, Tyler said. You're literally the best mechanic we've ever met. Devin, who rarely spoke, added simply, You've got this. Sam, of course, took a selfie with her and posted it online with a caption about how he knew her before she was famous. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. When the paperwork finally came through, there was a small celebration at her house. Her parents made dinner and invited her grandparents and a few close family friends. It was not a big party, just a quiet acknowledgement of something important. Her father gave a toast saying he was proud of her, but also making her promise she would not forget about the family shop. She promised. She could never forget the place where she learned everything. The first day of the program was intimidating. The Technical Institute was much bigger than her high school. The other students in the program were all older than her. Most were in their 20s or 30s, going back to school to learn a trade. She was by far the youngest, but once the classes started, she realized age did not matter. What mattered was understanding the material and doing the work. The instructors were impressed with how much she already knew. But they also challenged her in new ways. They taught her the engineering principles behind the mechanical work she had been doing by instinct. They showed her advanced diagnostic techniques and modern computer systems. They introduced her to materials science and fluid dynamics. It was hard, but it was exactly what she wanted. Danny kept his promise about the mentorship. He called her once a month to check in. He invited her to visit his private garage where he kept his collection of bikes. He introduced her to other riders and mechanics. He asked her advice on technical problems and actually listened to her suggestions. He treated her like a colleague, not like a kid. That respect meant everything to her. Balancing everything was exhausting. Regular school during the day, then driving an hour to the institute for evening classes, homework late at night, working at her father's shop on weekends, occasionally traveling to help Danny or consult on other projects. She was constantly tired. Her grades in regular school slipped a little because she could not focus on both. But she was learning more than she ever had in her life. She was getting closer to becoming the mechanic she wanted to be. 2 years passed faster than the girl expected. The program at the Technical Institute was supposed to take 3 years, but she completed it in 2 by taking extra classes and testing out of subjects she already knew. She was now 18, a high school graduate, and a certified motorcycle technician with specializations in performance engineering and custom fabrication. The certificates hung on the wall of her father's shop right next to the old family photos. The shop itself had changed. After the festival incident and all the attention that followed, more customers started coming. People drove from other cities just to have their bikes worked on by the festival mechanic, as some people still called her. Her father had to hire 2 part-time employees to keep up with demand. The shop that had been struggling to stay open was now thriving, but the biggest change was in the girl herself. She was not the same quiet, invisible teenager who had volunteered to fix Danny's bike that day. She still did not like unnecessary attention or drama. She still preferred machines to people most of the time, but she had gained confidence. She knew her worth now. She knew what she was capable of, and she was not afraid to speak up when she had something valuable to contribute. The teenage boys who had witnessed her repair that day stayed in touch. They had become real friends over the years. Jake was in college studying business. Tyler was working as a delivery driver while figuring out what he wanted to do. Devin had joined the military. Sam was in community college and still posting videos online, though now they were about cars instead of just random stuff. Chris was in his last year of high school and worked part-time at a motorcycle dealership. They still brought their bikes to her shop for maintenance. They paid full price now, insisting on it even when she offered friend discounts. They said she was a professional and deserved professional rates. She appreciated that respect. Sometimes on weekends, they would all meet up and go for rides together. Those were good days, simple days. Days where she could just enjoy riding without thinking about anything else. Danny Harrison had kept his promises too. The mentorship had been real and ongoing. He had connected her with people throughout the racing industry. He had brought her to competitions and introduced her to other riders and mechanics. He had asked her opinion on bike designs and mechanical innovations. When she completed her certification program, he offered her a full-time position with his racing team as a technical consultant. The salary he offered was more money than she had ever imagined making, but she turned it down. Not because she was not grateful, but because she had realized something over the past 2 years. She did not want to work for someone else's team or travel constantly, or be part of the professional racing circuit. What she wanted was right here. The shop, her father, the customers who brought their bikes with problems and trusted her to solve them. This was where she belonged. Danny was not offended when she declined. He actually smiled when she told him her decision. "I thought you might say that," he said. "You're like your father. You care more about the work than the glamour. That's rare in this business, but the offer stands if you ever change your mind." Instead of joining his team, she negotiated something different. She would remain an independent consultant available on a contract basis. When Danny or his colleagues had technical problems they could not solve, they could call her. She would charge consulting fees but would not be tied to any team or schedule. This gave her freedom and flexibility, while still allowing her to work on interesting high-level projects. It was the best of both worlds. Word continued to spread about her abilities. Racing teams from across the country contacted her. Some wanted to hire her full-time. Others wanted her to work on specific projects. She carefully chose which projects to accept based on what interested her and what fit her schedule. She was building a reputation as someone who could solve impossible problems, someone who understood machines in ways that other people did not. Her father officially made her a partner in the shop on her 19th birthday. They had the paperwork drawn up legally. It was now called Anderson and Daughter Motorcycle Repair. The new sign went up on the building and she felt a surge of pride every time she saw it. This place that had been her father's dream was now partly hers too. They were building something together, something real and lasting. The shop's waiting list grew to several weeks. They could have expanded, hired more people, opened additional locations, but they chose not to. They liked being a small operation. They liked knowing their customers personally. They liked taking their time with each bike and doing the work right instead of doing it fast. Quality over quantity, craftsmanship over profit. These were values her father had taught her, and she would not compromise them. One Saturday afternoon, almost exactly 3 years after the festival, the girl was in the shop working on a custom build. It was a beautiful vintage motorcycle that someone was restoring. She was fabricating a new exhaust system from scratch because the original parts were impossible to find. She had her welding helmet on and was focused completely on the work when she heard the shop door open. She finished the weld she was making before lifting the helmet. When she looked up, she saw 5 familiar faces. The teenage boys, though they were not really boys anymore. They were young men now, all around 20 years old. They stood together near the entrance, grinning at her. "What are you guys doing here?" she asked, setting down her welding torch. "I thought Chris was working today and the rest of you had plans." Jake stepped forward holding a small package wrapped in newspaper. "We wanted to give you something. It's the 3-year anniversary." She tilted her head, confused. "Anniversary of what?" "Of the day you fixed Danny Harrison's bike at the festival," Sam said. "The day everything changed." She had honestly forgotten the exact date. It had been just another day that happened to be remarkable. But apparently, they had remembered and had been planning something. Tyler held up his phone showing a video. It was the original footage Sam had recorded that day. The view count had surpassed 2 million at this point. "This video changed things for all of us," Devin said, speaking more than usual. "Not just you. Watching you do that, seeing someone our age accomplish something real, it made us believe we could do real things too." Chris added, "You inspired us. You still inspire us. We wanted you to know that." Jake handed her the package. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a framed photo. It was from that day at the festival. Someone had captured the moment right after Danny's show when he had stopped his bike next to her. She was smiling just a little, covered in grease, looking tired but satisfied. Danny had his fist up in victory. In the background, you could see the crowd and the big screens and the whole scene. It was a perfect snapshot of that moment. Below the photo was a small engraved plate that read, "When preparation meets opportunity, magic happens. Thank you for showing us what's possible." She felt her throat get tight. She was not someone who cried easily, but this touched something deep. These guys had been strangers 3 years ago. Now they were genuine friends who had been part of her journey. "This is really nice," she managed to say. "Thank you." "There's something on the back too," Sam said. She turned the frame over. On the back, they had all signed their names and written short messages. Jake wrote, "You're the best mechanic I know." Tyler wrote, "Thanks for always helping with my bike." Devin wrote simply, "Respect." Sam wrote, "You're famous and you still talk to us. That's cool." Chris wrote, "You taught me that skill matters more than age." She set the frame down carefully on her workbench and looked at them. "You guys are going to make me emotional and I have welding to finish. Get out of here." They laughed. But before they left, she said, "Hey, thank you, really, for remembering that day and for being good friends." "It means a lot," Jake smiled. "We should all grab dinner tonight if you're free. Our treat, to celebrate." She thought about her schedule. She had work to finish. She had always had work to finish. But some things were more important than work. "Yeah, okay. Dinner sounds good. Let me wrap up here and clean up. Give me an hour." They agreed and left the shop. She turned back to her welding project but found herself smiling. 3 years ago, she had been invisible. Now she had friends, opportunities, and a future she was building with her own hands, all because she had seen a problem and decided to help. All because she had taken a chance and stepped forward when others stepped back. Her father came out from the office where he had been doing paperwork. Was that the boys? Yeah, they brought me a gift for the anniversary. 3 years since the festival. He walked over and looked at the framed photo. He studied it for a long moment, then looked at his daughter with obvious pride. That was quite a day. Changed everything. It did, she agreed. But you know what's funny? I didn't fix that bike because I wanted anything to change. I just wanted to help. I saw a problem I thought I could solve. That's all, her father nodded. That's what makes you good at this. You care about the work, not the credit. You focus on solving problems, not on being recognized for solving them. That's real craftsmanship. She thought about that. He was right. Even now, with all the opportunities and attention, what she cared about most was the actual work. The feeling of diagnosing a problem correctly. The satisfaction of making something broken work again. The quiet pride of doing excellent work whether anyone was watching or not. I'm going to finish this exhaust system, she said, pulling her welding helmet back down. Then I'm meeting the boys for dinner. Good, her father said. Take the rest of the day off after dinner if you want. You've been working too hard lately. I learned from the best, she said with a smile. He laughed and went back to the office. She turned her attention back to the exhaust system, to the precise work of heating metal and joining pieces together. This was what she loved. This was what she was meant to do. Everything else, the recognition and opportunities and attention, that was all just extra. The core of who she was remained the same as it had always been. A girl who understood machines. A mechanic who cared about doing things right. Someone who stepped forward when others stepped back. Someone who trusted her skills even when others doubted. The festival had given her a stage and an audience, but she had already possessed the talent and courage that mattered. As she worked, she glanced over at the framed photo her friends had given her. That moment captured in time, a turning point she had not recognized while living it. Life was funny that way. The moments that changed everything often felt ordinary while they were happening. It was only looking back that you could see how significant they had been. But she would not trade anything. Not the hard work or the challenges or the pressure, because all of it had led her here. To a life she loved, to work that mattered, to a future full of possibilities, to friendships built on respect and shared experiences, to a partnership with her father that honored what he had built while creating something new together. She had become the mechanic she was always meant to be. And it had all started with one decision on one summer day, the decision to volunteer. The decision to help. The decision to trust herself and her abilities even when it would have been easier to stay quiet and invisible. That decision had changed her life, and she had never looked back. She set the frame down carefully on her workbench and looked at them. You guys are going to make me emotional and I have welding to finish. Get out of here, they laughed. But before they left, she said, Hey, thank you, really, for remembering that day and for being good friends. It means a lot, Jake smiled. We should all grab dinner tonight if you're free. Our treat. To celebrate. She thought about her schedule. She had work to finish. She had always had work to finish. But some things were more important than work. Yeah, okay. Dinner sounds good. Let me wrap up here and clean up. Give me an hour. They agreed and left the shop. She turned back to her welding project but found herself smiling. 3 years ago she had been invisible. Now she had friends, opportunities, and a future she was building with her own hands, all because she had seen a problem and decided to help. All because she had taken a chance and stepped forward when others stepped back. Her father came out from the office where he had been doing paperwork. Was that the boys? Yeah, they brought me a gift for the anniversary. 3 years since the festival. He walked over and looked at the framed photo. He studied it for a long moment, then looked at his daughter with obvious pride. That was quite a day. Changed everything. It did, she agreed. But you know what's funny? I didn't fix that bike because I wanted anything to change. I just wanted to help. I saw a problem I thought I could solve. That's all, her father nodded. That's what makes you good at this. You care about the work, not the credit. You focus on solving problems, not on being recognized for solving them. That's real craftsmanship. She thought about that. He was right. Even now, with all the opportunities and attention, what she cared about most was the actual work. The feeling of diagnosing a problem correctly. The satisfaction of making something broken work again. The quiet pride of doing excellent work whether anyone was watching or not. "I'm going to finish this exhaust system," she said, pulling her welding helmet back down. "Then I'm meeting the boys for dinner." "Good," her father said. "Take the rest of the day off after dinner if you want. You've been working too hard lately." "I learned from the best," she said with a smile. He laughed and went back to the office. She turned her attention back to the exhaust system, to the precise work of heating metal and joining pieces together. This was what she loved. This was what she was meant to do. Everything else, the recognition and opportunities and attention, that was all just extra. The core of who she was remained the same as it had always been. A girl who understood machines. A mechanic who cared about doing things right. Someone who stepped forward when others stepped back. Someone who trusted her skills even when others doubted. The festival had given her a stage and an audience, but she had already possessed the talent and courage that mattered. As she worked, she glanced over at the framed photo her friends had given her. That moment captured in time, a turning point she had not recognized while living it. Life was funny that way. The moments that changed everything often felt ordinary while they were happening. It was only looking back that you could see how significant they had been. But she would not trade anything. Not the hard work or the challenges or the pressure, because all of it had led her here. To a life she loved, to work that mattered, to a future full of possibilities, to friendships built on respect and shared experiences, to a partnership with her father that honored what he had built while creating something new together. She had become the mechanic she was always meant to be. And it had all started with one decision on one summer day, the decision to volunteer. The decision to help. The decision to trust herself and her abilities even when it would have been easier to stay quiet and invisible. That decision had changed her life, and she had never looked back.